We're a little over 48 hours away from the final college football playoff rankings and figuring out where the Aggies could fall in the bracket. Where do we think they're going to fall?
You are Locked On Aggies, your daily podcast on the Texas A&M Aggies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in. I'm your host, Matt Galatzan, and welcome to Locked On Aggies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the number one sports podcast network. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. If you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. Zach, we are 48 hours away from figuring out Texas A&M's final college football playoff ranking, where they will be placed within the bracket. So we wanted to kind of kick that around, some possibilities on how it could change this weekend with the conference championships and things like that. And, you know, what some potential matchups could look like for Texas A&M, because right now, if everything stays the same, Texas A&M will likely host Notre Dame in round one, and I don't think anybody really wants to see a rematch. I mean, it would be fun. I think it would be fun because I think Texas A&M would beat them like a drum in the rematch. But I'd like to see something new, maybe an easier path for the Aggies potentially could be good. But we're going to get into that here in a second, and then we are also going to get into Colin Klein officially leaving Texas A&M for Kansas State, and a new name that could be interesting in that search. And then get into some portal talk in the latter part of the show. But Zach, let's start with the college football playoff. A lot can happen this weekend. Obviously, you know, the top four seeds are all playing each other, or all playing this weekend. The number 9 seed is also in the field this weekend. But you know, Ohio State, Indiana, Texas Tech, BYU, and Georgia and Alabama. All three of those games have a potential to shape the playoffs for the Aggies in some way, shape, or form. Most notably, the Big 12 championship and the SEC championship, in my opinion. And I want to start with the Big 12 because I think this one is a lot more interesting because it is the Big 12. If BYU can kind of rebound from their last loss from Texas Tech and figure out a way to beat them, Texas A&M could theoretically have a chance to slide into a bye week.
Yeah, because of that loss, Texas Tech has to Arizona State. They're not undefeated, so they have the potential to, maybe drop pretty far if, let's say, BYU blows them out, which I don't think is going to happen. But there's some potential there, and so A&M fans are going to, really want to keep a close eye on this weekend, and even tonight as well, as we're recording this on Friday. You got the American Conference Championship, North Texas and Tulane, because those are two teams A&M could potentially face. Not both of them, but one of them, whoever wins. That's, you never know. You could be hosting one of those teams depending on if everything else kind of falls chalky. Notre Dame, they could. I know some projections have them at 10. They're at 9 right now. You never know what's going to happen with them. But you could be hosting potentially a group of 5, and that'd be really beneficial for A&M. Big Ten championship, Indiana, Ohio State, not really much there to watch if you're an Aggie fan. The SEC championship, Alabama, Georgia, that could really impact A&M's seeding, depending on what happens there. I think we were kind of talking about it before the show. If Alabama beats Georgia again, I don't see a world where they beat them convincingly or anything, but if they beat them again, you can make the argument that should Georgia fall, further behind A&M, we'll see. I honestly don't know what this committee will do in that situation, because you don't want to. They've shown that they don't want to punish teams for playing in the conference championship game. They made that clear last season, but we don't know what this year's committee will necessarily do. There's some new faces, like we've talked about with BYU, but everyone's been talking about it. BYU could be punished for losing their conference championship game, and they could be out of the playoff altogether. They're not currently in the field, but and so we'll see what happens there. But I think there's an argument to be made that maybe A&M jumps Georgia if Georgia loses, because Georgia would have 2 losses, A&M would have 1.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's interesting to see what they'll do. You kind of, from outside perspective, if you're not an A&M fan, you don't want it to be chalk because you kind of want to see some chaos. But for A&M, maybe some chaos would be beneficial. But at the same time, it wouldn't be too bad either if things kind of play out as we expect, because then the Aggies could kind of stay where they're at. You don't get a bye, but you get a home game potentially against a Group of 5 team. It's gonna be really, really interesting. And the good thing is for A&M fans is that they haven't really had to pay attention to conference championship weekend like last season, for example, because the Aggies they weren't going to be in the playoff, and so this is a whole new thing for A&M. So many exciting days and moments ahead, over the next couple weeks, and potentially all the way into middle of January for the national championship game. So a lot to watch if you're an Aggie fan.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that chaos to a certain degree would be my choice for Texas A&M. I mean, I understand what you're saying. Hosting a home playoff game would be fantastic. But if I'm personally, this is just me personally, if I'm Texas A&M, I want Alabama to upset Georgia, and I want BYU to upset Texas Tech. Number one, because it guarantees that there's going to be no shenanigans that Texas gets in, which I still don't think they will, but like
0.
Just the idea that, if those games are blowouts, like Alabama loses in a blowout and BYU loses in a blowout, maybe the committee changed their minds. I don't think they will. But also, if those two things happen, I think you move above both of those teams, and I think you slide into the 5 spot. Maybe Ole Miss gets the bye, or maybe they decide, hey, Ole Miss doesn't have as good a resume as Texas Tech or Texas A&M. Let's move Texas A&M ahead of them. Either way, if you're in the 5 spot, you're probably hosting North Texas or Tulane, which would be an easy win. Ole Miss already beat Tulane like 45-10 this year or something like that. And if Duke beats Virginia, then James Madison's also getting into this thing more than likely, assuming they win their conference championship game, if they have one. I don't even know.
But, Sun Belt.
Yeah, Sun Belt championship game. So in that scenario, whether you're 5 or 6, you get one of those teams, and you don't have to worry about a Miami. You don't have to worry about a Texas or a Vanderbilt or something like that slipping in. So that is something that I think could be very interesting. Then again, it also brings up the conversation if, let's say, Tulane beats North Texas and Georgia beats Alabama, does Alabama drop to the 11 seed? I mean, we don't know. So,
let's say,
well, they're 9 right now, so if they got another loss, maybe they would drop to the 11 in the bracket. And maybe if you move up to the 6th seed, then you got to play Alabama in round 1, which I would rather play Tulane or James Madison in round 1. Yeah. But we'll see. It's here's what the bracket looks like currently for the YouTube crowd, just real quick. Texas Tech is there at the 4 seed. So if they drop back to 7, if they lose to BYU, then Ole Miss or Oregon likely slides up into that spot. You slide down to 5 or 6, and you get that group of 5 automatic qualifier, or Virginia, which I think is the preferred path. So I think you want Texas Tech to lose. Theoretically, Georgia falling could have the same effect. I don't know that it will, though, just because I think the committee loves Georgia, and Georgia's been playing really well. I just think that they love Georgia, so maybe they wouldn't fall as far. I mean, I think that they should fall that far, but maybe they won't. We'll just have to see what the committee thinks. Either way, my final prediction for this, and I'll get yours here in a second, Zach. I think Texas Tech beats BYU. I think Alabama beats Georgia, because Alabama owns Georgia. Georgia and Kirby Smart have an Alabama problem. So until they prove to me that they can beat Georgia, I don't think they're going to do it. And if that's the case, do they jump A&M? I don't think so, but it certainly makes things a lot more interesting. Maybe Georgia slides down to 5 or 6. Ole Miss slides up 1. And Texas A&M could stay put or they could slide up 1. But I don't think that there's going to be a lot of chaos this weekend is what I'm trying to say. I think it goes pretty much chalk with the exception of Alabama beating Georgia. But, if you have a different prediction, then go for it.
No, I agree with you. It's hard to argue with Alabama potentially beating Georgia. They already did it this season. They have constantly done it over the past couple of years. Kirby Smart has an Alabama problem. Steve Sarkisian has a Kirby Smart problem. Mike Elko has a Steve Sarkisian problem. It goes on and on. But I just think that at the 7th spot, that's not a bad place if you're A&M, especially when you see Indiana right there in the second round. Indiana's a great team. I just think that they're a little bit overrated. They deserve to be the 2 seed. They may fall to the 3 seed if they lose to Ohio State, which they will. But that's a pretty favorable path for A&M. I do. It is kind of a little bit, of a nervous feeling if you're an A&M fan to see Notre Dame coming into College Station. I mean, pretty crazy to think that'd be the 3rd time A&M and Notre Dame have played since last season, and of course Notre Dame won at Kyle Field last year. Obviously, a much different A&M team, but Notre Dame. They're going to be pretty pissed off if they have to play A&M in the first round after that heartbreaker in South Bend this year. And I had my opinions on Notre Dame. They don't have a quality win. They have just a bunch of boosted analytics. It's pretty annoying. The conversation surrounding Notre Dame, in my opinion, I don't think they're as strong as a resume as people say. And I think. They're a talented team, so it definitely would be, one to watch there. But yeah, no, I think 7 or maybe 6 spot for A&M would be good. But I think if you can potentially face Indiana in the second round, you could potentially be punching your ticket to the semifinals because I think A&M would have their way with Indiana, if I'm being quite honest with you. So yeah, I'm with you. I think maybe the 7th spot is a realistic spot for A&M to slide into. 5 seed wouldn't be bad either, but we'll just have to see what happens.
Well, if I'm Texas A&M, I want to avoid going up to the 5 seed or the 4 seed because I'd like Ohio State to be on the other side of the bracket for me. I feel much better about Indiana and Notre Dame and Georgia and Ole Miss than I would Ohio State. But just a little note, Kirby Smart is 1-7 against Alabama in Athens. Or as the Georgia coach. So anyway, we're going to change gears. That segment went a little long, but when we come back, we are going to talk about the Colin Klein news and a new name that could pop up as a very interesting offensive coordinator candidate. And, if they can get him. Talk about that next. NFL Sundays move fast. One big play and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds, every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. Live betting is best when the game starts to shift, a receiver gets hot, a defense tightens up, or the momentum flips after a turnover. FanDuel lets you jump into that moment. Live spreads and money lines adjust instantly, player props update as guys heat up. You can bet next touchdown scores, drive results, totals, and more to keep you locked into every snap, every drive, every possibility. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your live bets all season long. FanDuel. The game moves fast, and so can you. Well, Colin Klein's gone officially. We expected this news as soon as Chris Kleiman at Kansas State kind of hinted that he was going to retire. Colin Klein's name came up instantly. And it makes sense. It's his alma mater. They love him there. He's a legend there. He did great things at Texas A&M in his 2 years, especially this year. He turned Texas A&M into one of the most exciting offenses in the country. And it's a big loss. There's no two ways around it. But it's not all is lost. There's a lot of good offensive coordinators out there. We posted a podcast yesterday, and as soon as I hit upload, literally as soon as I hit upload on this podcast yesterday, two, not one, two of the candidates that I listed in the podcast got new jobs. Billy Napier is going to be the new head coach at James Madison. He was kind of a long shot anyway, just kind of shot in the dark. The other one that I thought would be really interesting was Buster Faulkner at Georgia Tech. He did great things with Haynes King, former Aggie who's killing it over there in Atlanta. He's going to be the new offensive coordinator for Summerall over at Florida, so he's off the board. Holman Wiggins still feels like the leader in the clubhouse to a lot of people, the wide receivers coach. He's never called plays, though, so I don't know if that's my preference. I think he's a really smart guy. I think he's really a great coach, but I think that they should bring in a guy who has called plays before. Gerard Johnson, another one we mentioned yesterday, former Aggie quarterback. He's been with the Houston Texans for a while. Smart offensive mind. I think having him back would excite a lot of people. He's still on the board. Bobby Petrino was another name that we brought up. He's been at Texas A&M once. Jimbo Fisher kind of screwed him over and tried to get his hands into everything, and it really just didn't end well. I think bringing him back with a fresh start under Mike Elko, who would not mess with what he wants to do offensively, would be a really interesting hire. But here's one that I thought we should add to the pile. Obviously, North Texas's head coach is taking a new job, which leads to the possibility. Maybe he takes his offensive coordinator with him, but Jordan Davis, the offensive coordinator at North Texas, is something that really caught my eye. I've seen some Aggie fans talking about it on message boards, and it really is an interesting option, Zach. If you look at what North Texas has done offensively this year, with a true freshman quarterback who never started a game in high school in Mestamaker, and a true freshman running back who has been unbelievable this year, North Texas leads the nation in scoring offense, averaging 46.8 points per game. They are 38th in rushing offense, averaging 186.08 yards per game. They are second in the nation in passing offense with 325.7 yards per game, and they are first in the nation in total offense, averaging 511.8 yards per game. He has been unbelievable this year. Caleb Hawkins, the freshman running back, has rushed the ball 193 times for 1,216 yards and 23 touchdowns. He's averaging 6.3 yards per carry, which is a lot. And then obviously Drew Mestamaker has thrown for 3,835 yards, 29 touchdowns, just 4 picks. He's completing over 70% of his passes. It's an explosive offense, and it's one that I think, maybe it doesn't work in the SEC, but it feels like it would.
Yeah. I was looking at North Texas's schedule yesterday because that could be a team A&M could play depending on where they fall into the bracket. So I was kind of looking at their schedule, and they have just absolutely dominated every single opponent this year, aside from South Florida. And South Florida is a pretty solid team. So not a bad loss there for North Texas, but their offense is clearly very explosive. Drew Mestamaker, an Austin kid. A Texas guy, obviously. So, really interesting to see the way that they've been able to produce this season. And yeah, I think that would be an interesting one for sure. You never know how that's going to translate, to the SEC. They are in the American, and I'm trying to remember their entire schedule, but I don't think they really played a quality power conference team this year. So you got to take it with a grain of salt, but obviously, the potential is there for sure. Holman Wiggins, you mentioned he hasn't called plays. Yeah, I agree with you there. That's an interesting one to consider. But will it actually happen? I'm not sure about that. I know that with Wiggins, he's an elite recruiter. That's for sure. So you definitely want to have him on staff because Ryan Williams, Alabama receiver, he said last year that he almost went to A&M because of Wiggins, and so this guy's obviously an elite recruiter. Calling plays, though, he would certainly have to prove himself in that regard. Bobby Petrino, though, and that one really intrigues me. Arkansas, it was a pretty awful year for them. A lot of close losses, but the offense was really explosive. A&M saw that Texas saw that. I mean, Arkansas was putting up some big yardage numbers, and Bobby Petrino, taking over for Sam Pittman, he was dialing it up, even though it wasn't really resulting in wins. So I think that one would be good because, Petrino and Mike Elko, that pairing together, like you mentioned, Mike Elko would really let Petrino do his stuff. I kind of like Petrino as the idea there. I'm not sure, exactly what's going to happen in that regard. But really interesting to see. The good thing is that, Elko expects Colin Klein to stay throughout the playoff, which he obviously should. That'd be pretty silly if he, didn't coach throughout the playoff for A&M. It's good to see that. We've seen a lot of coordinators and different programs kind of, taking new jobs over the past week, but they're all sort of staying with their teams for the CFP. So that's good to see for A&M's part.
Yeah, and I mean, Bobby Petrino would probably be my choice if I was to make this decision tomorrow. Jordan Davis really intrigues me, though. I can't lie. He's only 33 years old. He's Eric Morris, the North Texas head coach, is heading to Oklahoma State. Maybe he takes Jordan Davis to Oklahoma State with him. That would make a ton of sense, obviously. But I mean, if this is a guy that you want to go after, I mean, he's from Texas. He's only 33 years old. He played football at Texas Tech. He coached as a graduate assistant at Texas Tech for a couple years. He was a wide receivers coach and assistant head coach at Incarnate Word. Then he was an offensive analyst for Washington State in 2022. North Texas named him the offensive coordinator and wide receivers coach in 2023, and they have been unbelievable offensively ever since. So that's just a name that I think is very interesting, but I agree. Bobby Petrino would be my leader in the clubhouse right now if I had to choose. Another dark horse probably won't happen, but Tim Beck over at Vanderbilt. Maybe you could throw a lot of money at him. He's done wonders with Diego Pavia, but they just signed the number one quarterback in college football in Jared Curtis in the 2026 class. And hell, Diego Pavia might come back, which would be super annoying, but we'll see how that goes. All right, let's get into our last segment here, Zach. Texas A&M is going to lose a lot of talent to the NFL draft, to graduation this season, so we're going to tell you our biggest portal needs for Texas A&M heading into next season when we come back from this break. The holidays are officially here, which means gift hunting season is on, and if you want something meaningful, personal, and guaranteed to get a reaction, Aura Frames is the gift that delivers every time. It's not just something you wrap, it's a way to share memories. Because Aura isn't your average picture frame. You can preload the frame with photos before gifting it, so when they plug it in, the memories are already there. No apps figure it out, no setup headaches, just instant smiles. I gifted something like this to my grandparents years ago and to my parents. And, you can do that for anybody who loves photos. It's endless uploads of pictures and 30-second videos through the Aura app. You can add personalized message right inside the frame so the gift feels thoughtful the moment it's open. Packaging comes gift ready, no price tag, no wrapping needed. It's a huge win. And it's a holiday gift that actually gets used, and it's not forgotten in a drawer. So for a limited time, save on the perfect gift by visiting auraframes.com to get $35 off. Aura's best-selling carver mat frames, named #1 by Wirecutter, by using promo code COLLEGE at checkout. That's auraframes.com, promo code COLLEGE. This deal is exclusive to listeners, and frames sell out fast, so order yours now to get it in time for the holidays. Support the show by mentioning us at checkout. Terms and conditions apply. All right, so a lot of players leaving Texas A&M next year, Zach. Across the board, both sides of the ball. So obviously Texas A&M finished with a great recruiting class, but in today's day and age of college football, you got to hit the transfer portal. Mike Elko did a really good job of that in his first couple years here. His first offseason before he coached the game, he did a very good job. And then last year, he killed it. He brought in Casey Concepcion. He brought in Mario Craver. He brought in TJ Searcy and a bunch of other guys that have made a difference. He's going to have to do it again this offseason. There's no two ways around it. That's just the way it is these days. So let's start with the offensive side of the ball, Zach. I think the biggest need for Texas A&M offensively is offensive line, because you're losing quite a few guys along that offensive line. You're losing Trey Zune at left tackle. You're losing Armaj Reed-Adams at right guard. You're losing Demetrius Crownover at right tackle. You're losing Ruben Fothery. You're losing your backup center in Coley. I can't pronounce it. Fayou. Apologies there. And you're also probably, there's a chance that you could lose somebody else to the portal as well. You have some talent. You got the young Lamont Rogers, who is a 5-star. You got Tyler Thomas in there. You got Ashton Funk. You got Blake Ivy. But I feel like you kind of need, with losing potentially 5 to 6 guys on that offensive line, you're going to need to have an influx of talent.
Yeah, no matter what year it is, no matter what your team has done, I don't care who you are, but addressing offensive line in the offseason is pretty much going to be near the top of the list for almost every single team in the country, just because of how important that that group is and that position is for the game. So it's pretty obvious for sure. But yeah, certainly with A&M's case, losing someone like Armaj Reed-Adams, Trey Zune, those guys, those guys have been at A&M for quite a while now. So it's going to be sad to see them go, but you got to move forward and address that area for sure. For me though, I think running back will certainly be interesting. There's no two ways about it. Le'Veon Moss, Amari Daniels, EJ Smith, those guys are going to be gone, especially Le'Veon Moss, potentially being an NFL draft pick. I think he definitely, can find his way into a roster and, make an impact. So, you obviously have KJ Edwards coming in as a freshman next year, and he's going to be talented, no doubt. But, you're not going to want to put 1,000 yards onto his shoulders as a true freshman in the SEC. That'd be pretty incredible, but I just don't see it. So, do you go after someone like Jaden Baugh at Florida? That'd be pretty interesting. I don't know. The coaching change there. Could he elect to leave? Does he want to stay in Gainesville? I think a lot of people are going to have their eyes on him. Wide receiver is not necessarily an area where A&M needs to address, in my opinion. I mean, Case Concepcion, he's going to be a draft pick. But Mario Craver, the fact that he's only going to be heading into his 3rd season next year, that's pretty big for A&M. So they don't really necessarily need to lean on getting a receiver out of the portal. Ashton Bethel-Roman as well going to be coming back. You got true freshman Aaron Gregory coming in. There's a lot of talent there. So you saw A&M get busy at receiver this past offseason in the portal, but not necessarily a need there, in my opinion. I think it's a luxury to have Mario Craver coming back for a 2nd year for sure. But yeah, you got to see what happens. Maybe you go into the portal for a new backup quarterback. I don't know.
Yeah.
That you're never going to have go wrong with getting a veteran backup in the portal. So another year with Marcel Reed at the helm. But you never know what happens with injuries. You pray he doesn't go down, but I think that's something that they could look at too. The good thing is though with A&M is they're still playing, and so a lot of these guys we won't really necessarily know what they're going to do until after the year. With the way that the calendar works, though, you may see some depth pieces, some guys further down the chart, maybe hit the portal in the next couple weeks. We've seen that before with CFP teams losing some players right before playing their games. Nothing has really happened on that end for A&M quite yet, but certainly it probably will, just because of the way the calendar works. So once the offseason hits and once some of these depth pieces start hitting the portal, we'll kind of really know what A&M needs to hit. But for now, I mean, it's just great to see the Aggies still being able to play and not really have to worry about this quite yet.
Yeah, I was going to mention backup quarterback. Just having a veteran back there, I think, would be smart. And then, wide receiver isn't a bad idea. You still got Terry Bussey, ABR. Right. You got the guys you're bringing in. You got Mario Craver. But having another veteran wide receiver in there wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. Let's move to defense real quick, Zach, before we close this thing out. We got about 3 minutes left, probably. Defensive line, I think, is an area that you should probably bring somebody in. You're losing Albert Regis. You're losing Tyler Onyedem. You got a lot of talent in that room. You still got DJ Hicks potentially. He may try to go pro, but I don't think so. You still got Dalen Evans, DJ Sanders, Landon Rink, and Chase Sims.
Cassius Howell leaving.
Well, I'm talking about defensive tackle, and then on the edge as well. I think is another area too. TJ Searcy, Cassius Howell could both be gone. Dan Hayes is going to be gone. You got Sam Mpemba and Marco Jones and Rylan Kennedy there, but you need more depth there, in my opinion. And then the other position I was going to mention is corner. You're going to be losing Will Lee III. You're going to be losing Tyreek Chappelle. You like what you have in Jordan Shaw and Javon Thomas and Bravion Rogers. You got Brandon Arrington this year, but I think adding one more corner, potentially a nickel corner, could be a big help for them as well.
Yeah, no, defense is definitely going to be an area to watch. Especially, linebacker, Torian York, Scooby Williams. Going to be tough to see those guys leave as well. They both walked on senior days. So I guess the good thing is for A&M is that, Mike Elko is going to be bringing in, his recruits, his portal guys. It's not that the guys that A&M already when he took the job, were bad or anything, but now he's really forming his roster with his guys that he wants, from high school and from the portal. So going to be really interesting to see what happens, but we got a long way to go because hopefully A&M makes a deep playoff run before we have to worry about all that.
Yeah, I was going to mention linebacker, but I just got a sneaky suspicion that Torian York's going to be back. I know that he walked on senior day, but he just seems like the kind of guy that would come back and give it one more run. We'll see, though, because Scooby Williams will be gone, so maybe you do bring in a linebacker, and if Torian York leaves, and I think you definitely have to bring one in. So you could see A&M bring in 10 to 12 guys in the portal, maybe 13 or 14, depending on how much they actually lose in terms of depth to younger guys and these guys that are graduating and going on to the NFL. But we'll see what happens, because that's kind of stuff could start to move really as soon as Sunday. Once we get the final college playoff rankings and their final seed, I imagine you wouldn't see too much of it in terms of big names until the Aggies season is officially over, whether that's after the national championship game or earlier. But that's going to do it for another episode of Locked On Aggies. Thank you so much for making Locked On Aggies your first listen of the day. And thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. For your second listen today, please go check out the Locked On SEC. Chris Gordy breaks down the best conference in college sports, from the rivalries to the championship game and every game in between. Find Locked On SEC on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to our channel, subscribe to our podcast, download our podcast, follow us on social media at Locked On Aggies, follow Zach on X at Zach Dimmitt 7, follow me on X at Matt Galatzan, and we'll see you next time.